The tale of humanity is one fraught with episodes of calamity and resilience. One such chapter that remains deeply etched in our collective memory is that of the Black Death, a name which evokes the very essence of dread and devastation. Recorded as one of history's deadliest pandemics, its shroud of darkness descended upon the human race in the mid-14th century, claiming lives with such ferocity that it left indelible marks on the pages of time. Our story begins in the vast expanses of Asia, with whispers of a malignancy brewing in the backdrop of thriving civilizations. The bacterium Yersinia pestis, the harbinger of bubonic plague, reared its lethal head, first silently, then with an unstoppable momentum. Historians trace the origin of the plague to the regions around Central and East Asia, where it silently festered before making its grim journey towards the West. In those days, not knowing the role of fleas carried by rats, historically the principal agents for the transmission of this plague, people were unwittingly poised on the brink of cataclysm. The paths tread by merchants seeking silk and spices became the very vectors that facilitated the Black Death's journey. The fabled Silk Road, a network of trade routes connecting East and West, served as the conduit for more than just goods. It became the inadvertent channel for a pandemic. With each caravan and voyage, the disease crept closer to Europe. But none could foresee the speed and scale of the onslaught that would follow as the Black Death found its way aboard trading ships bound for the Sicilian ports, arriving around 1347. The Great Mortality, as it was then known, set the stage for a new era, an era marked by loss and transformation. In the year 1347, a grim visitor docked at the ports of Sicily. Merchant ships, having set sail from the Black Sea, carried within their holds not just the wares of the East, but an unseen and deadly cargo. The Black Death, as it would come to be known, made its landfall here, ushering in a period of unparalleled mortality and fear. The contagion wasted no time. It tore through the coastal towns with a voracious appetite, leaving few survivors in its wake. Its arrival in Europe was marked by the rapid decline of bustling markets and lively ports, which soon turned into ghostly echoes of their former selves. Within these trading centers, the mortality rate soared. Between 1347 and 1351, it is estimated that up to 50% of the European population succumbed to the plague. Confusion and terror reigned as the plague advanced. Medical knowledge of the time was ill-equipped to understand or combat such an enemy. Phlegm, blood, and black bile, the supposed humors governing the body, offered no explanation for the swift deaths, which often followed within days of the first fever. Cities and towns grasped at straws. They turned to quarantine measures, with the Venetian city of Ragusa pioneering this approach in 1377, isolating ships and their crews for a period that would become known as a Trentino, or 30-day isolation, later extended to 40 days, or a quarantino. In this desperation, people looked for reason and for scapegoats. The alignment of planets, the wrath of God, and the spread of noxious miasmas were but a few of the supposed culprits. Jews, beggars, and foreigners often bore the brunt of this frantic search for blame, leading to persecution and violence, a dark reflection of humanity's tendency to fear what it does not understand. Their understanding insufficient against such a calamity, populations across Europe did what they could to cope with the swift and silent march of this pestilence. The Black Death had arrived, and its grip on Europe had only begun to tighten. As the Black Death swept across Europe, decimating populations with unprecedented fury, it left in its wake an economic landscape in turmoil. The very foundations of medieval society, rooted in the feudal system, began to shift and crumble. The sheer scale of human loss, with some regions losing up to half their population, created a labor vacuum. This scarcity of workers turned the tables in favor of the peasantry. Those who survived found themselves in a position to demand higher wages and better working conditions. Historians point to the mid-14th century as a time when the dynamics of feudalism faced a turning point. Traditional bonds between serfs and their lords were challenged, as laborers could not be as easily constrained to their tied obligations on the manor. The labor shortage meant that serfs could negotiate their way out of the strictures of feudal dues and services, leading to a gradual erosion of the feudal order. This transformation wasn't instantaneous, but marked the beginning of the end for feudalism, as it had been known. Additionally, the catastrophic decline in the workforce prompted changes in land use. With fewer hands to till the fields, agricultural practices were reevaluated. Marginal lands were abandoned, and a shift occurred from labor-intensive crops to ones that were less demanding. This reconfiguration led to more pastoral farming practices. The economic upheaval paved the way for the rise of the merchant class, traders and entrepreneurs who seized the opportunity to fill the gaps left by the traditional feudal elite. These merchants accumulated wealth by controlling trade and exploiting new market conditions, setting the stage for the burgeoning commerce of the Renaissance. As the Black Death swept through Europe, it clawed not only at the flesh, but also at the foundations of society, leaving cultural and religious institutions in turmoil. The pandemic, a seemingly inscrutable force of nature, compelled people to look skyward for explanations, ushering in a period of spiritual introspection and radical shifts in religious thought. Following the initial shock, the omnipresent church found itself grappling with unprecedented challenges to its authority. Citizens of stricken communities, desperate for meaning in the calamity that had befallen them, often resorted to looking for scapegoats to shoulder the blame. Jews, foreigners, beggars, and even women were singled out, accused of causing the plague through heresy or witchcraft. Such fears led to horrific episodes of persecution and violence, further destabilizing a society already pierced by loss and despair. The flagellant movement, a penitential exercise embracing self-inflicted pain, burgeoned as people sought to appease what they perceived as divine wrath. This period is marked by a sense of collective guilt and an urgent quest for redemption, with the church struggling to offer solace amidst the mounting death toll. The profound mark of the plague is vividly engraved in the cultural artifacts of the time, particularly in the visual arts. The danse macabre, or dance of death, emerged as a prevailing motif. It depicted skeletal figures leading individuals from all social strata in a final macabre dance, a stark reminder of death's universality and impartiality. Similarly, memento mori, Latin for remember you must die, became a common theme, urging the living to reflect upon their mortality. These artworks served as sobering mementos of life's fleeting nature, advocating for repentance and moral rectitude in the face of an unfathomable and omnipresent death. Narratives of the period paint a picture where churches were gradually transformed from places of worship to refuges for the afflicted and dying. The clergy, tasked with providing spiritual aid, were often helplessly outnumbered by the needs of the sick. These conditions cultivated seeds of skepticism and self-reliance among the laity, fostering a theological shift that would eventually contribute to the birth of the Reformation and the transformation of the Western religious landscape. The Black Death, thus, not only decimated populations, but also planted the roots for a cultural and religious metamorphosis that would echo through the centuries. We now turn to the individual stories that ripple across the tapestry of suffering and resilience from the Black Death pandemic. Through these anecdotes, peering into the souls that lived and struggled, we acknowledge the depths of their experience. The stories are drawn not just from the imagination of historians, but from the records they left behind, echoes of existence etched in ink and parchment. Imagine a world where every door bears a mark of mourning and every street corner is a testament to loss. In a letter dated 1348, a Florentine chronicler pens his despair. All the citizens did little else except to carry dead bodies to be buried. At every church they dug deep pits down to the water table, and thus those who were poor who died during the night were bundled up quickly and thrown into the pit. In the morning, when a large number of bodies were found in the pit, they took some earth and shoveled it down on top of them, and later others were placed on top of them, and then another layer of earth, just as one makes lasagna with layers of pasta and cheese. The resilience in the act of writing, of documenting the unthinkable, attests to the indomitable spirit of those who endured. Further north in England, a peasant's diary offers a glimpse of a different kind, written in a shaky hand that quivers with uncertainty and exhaustion. "This year the crops stand untended," he writes, "for there are few left with breath in their bodies to swing a scythe. Our village, once brimming with laughter and clatter, is now a silent mistress. We lean on one another, those few of us remain. Margaret, good soul, brought a brew of herbs she claimed could fend off the sickness. We sip, recounting stories of those we've lost. Remembering is all we can afford to do." In such stories of communal support and makeshift remedies, one sees not just the shadow of death, but the light of shared humanity. From the parchments of the noble class, a different narrative emerges. A letter from a lord to his absent son, dated the summer of 1349, conveys a starkly different tone, tempered by privilege, yet not untouched by despair. "The estate stands, but it is not as it was. Half our serfs are fallen, and our fields yield naught but withered promise. The monks speak of punishment, I see only random cruelty. Advise me, son, for your education in the arts of Venice may yet yield some counsel that eludes my war-worn mind." Such was the reach of the pestilence that it humbled even those accustomed to power, redefining the mighty and the meek alike. To conclude our journey into the deeply human side of this historic calamity, we recall the records of physicians and healers, whose notes capture both the ignorance of an era and the hope for salvation. One healer in Avignon wrote, "I've seen signs upon the skin, and knew forthwith the grim dance had begun. The potions and spells are but feeble shields. We look for signs in the heavens, but find no respite." Each entry a testament to the thirst for understanding in a world where knowledge was overshadowed by the enormity of nature's wrath. These accounts, from peasant to noble, from chronicler to healer, are vital threads in the tapestry of human history. They remind us of the fragility of our constructs when faced with nature's indiscriminate force. And yet, they also underscore the resilience, the shared narratives of survival and adaptation. They speak of a past that, in many ways, reflects our own encounters with global crises, reminding us that we are part of a long lineage of those who persevere. As the Black Death laid its shadow across Europe, the concept of public health was in its infancy. With no coherent understanding of how diseases spread, communities were largely unequipped to deal with this unprecedented catastrophe. However, amid the turmoil, some of the earliest public health measures began to take form. It was during this dark period that we see the advent of quarantines as a desperate attempt to control the rampant spread of the disease. The word quarantine itself originates from the Venetian dialect form of the Italian quaranta giorni, meaning 40 days. This term arose from the mandatory isolation of ships and their cargoes before entering the city of Venice, an isolation that lasted for 40 days. More than just a metric of time, the practice represented one of humanity's first organized efforts to halt the spread of infectious disease. But what was the prevailing theory of disease transmission during the days of the Black Death? The miasma theory, the belief that diseases were spread by a form of bad air, was widespread. Physicians and lay people alike held the conviction that putrid odors carried the pestilence. This rudimentary understanding, though inaccurate through the lens of modern science, was nonetheless a foundation for the development of disease containment strategies. When drawing parallels to contemporary times, we can observe how public health responses to pandemics have evolved. Take, for instance, the recent global challenge faced during the COVID-19 pandemic. The idea of quarantine was not a medieval relic, but re-emerged as a common recommendation by health authorities worldwide. Modern measures, informed by centuries of scientific progress, have given us a clearer understanding of disease vectors, allowing for more sophisticated and often technology-driven methods of tracking, containment, and treatment. In concluding our brief glimpse into the realm of public health during the Black Death, let us recognize that, while our understanding of diseases and how to manage them has drastically changed. The fundamental instinct to protect our communities has remained a constant thread throughout history. The Black Death's influence on our collective approach to public health is as evident today as it was in the 14th century. As we contemplate the profound reverberations of the Black Death on Europe, it is essential to recognize the key transformations that occurred in its wake. The pandemic, which dramatically reduced the population from 1347 to 1351, fundamentally altered the socio-economic fabric of the continent. The feudal system, which had been the cornerstone of medieval Europe, began to wane as labor shortages empowered serfs to demand higher wages and more rights, leading to revolts and the gradual erosion of feudal obligations. Moreover, the Black Death catalyzed changes in land use and ownership. As vast swathes of the populace perished, survivors inherited or purchased lands at lower prices. This redistribution of land, coupled with the rise of the merchant class, paved the way for a more diversified economy and the eventual rise of capitalism. In the cultural realm, the ubiquity of death inspired poignant reflections on mortality, apparent in art forms like the danse macabre and in the philosophy of memento mori. The legacy of the Black Death extends beyond historical and cultural shifts. It also provides invaluable perspectives on global health crises. Understanding the response to the pandemic, from quarantine measures to the birth of public health initiatives, has ongoing relevance, especially as we face modern challenges like COVID-19. The Black Death reminds us of the resilience of societies when confronted with catastrophic events and the importance of learning from the past to navigate the complexities of present and future health emergencies. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the harrowing times of the Black Death and its far-reaching consequences. Your engagement breathes life into history. Please subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking explorations, and don't hesitate to leave your suggestions for future episodes in the comments below. Who knows, your idea might shape our next historical adventure. The suggestion with the most likes will receive special consideration for an upcoming show. Until next time, keep pondering the past and its lessons for today. Farewell.